And welcome back to Attorneys on Call. Attorney Ann Ochsner is in studio with us now. Ann, good to see you, and thanks for joining us today.
Good to see you, Drew.
We are talking about bicycle accidents and traumatic brain injuries. And it just seems to me, it seems like more and more people are riding bikes. It's a great way to get around, you know, if you can. It's less expensive than a car or motorcycle, but that can also be dangerous. A lot of times there are not bike lanes on roads. Sometimes I see people riding bikes on the sidewalk, sometimes on this side of the street, on that side of the street. What are we seeing?
Right. So bicyclists, you know, they're vulnerable out there. And so,
Right.
you know, safety is key on bikes. And you're exactly right, particularly like right now, this time of year, the weather's getting nice, it's summer, people are trying to get out. Everyone's been in their houses for the last year.
Right.
And so you see people riding in groups for fitness, you see
Yeah.
people riding by themselves for fitness or for necessity going to and from work. And so, yeah, following the laws and being safe. So, you know, North Carolina is a contributory negligence state. And so, you know, their ability to recover in a claim should something bad happen to them is going to be of paramount importance. So, like, I hear you talking about, you know, bike lanes and can you be on the sidewalk? Can you be on the road?
Right.
So, you know, the law looks at bicycles as if they're vehicles.
Okay.
And they have every right to be on the road.
Right.
But when you're talking about, you know, negligence, the law for the point of a legal claim, the standard is really what would a reasonable person do?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that applies also. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you were, let's say, out of necessity trying to ride your bike to work and
Sure.
you know, on some of the big roads in the Raleigh-Durham area, you know, throughout North Carolina, and it made more sense, it was a safer choice to be on a sidewalk, I think that would be acceptable.
Right.
There could be local ordinances on that as well.
Okay.
And I see much more bike lanes, many more bike lanes
Right.
coming. I know Durham, Chapel Hill, Raleigh's becoming more bike friendly. And so I think all those are going to help.
So if you are a bicyclist, and I will tell you this, about a month or so ago in my neighborhood, I was coming home from somewhere and I made a turn and I saw a older lady outside of her car and a gentleman who had obviously been on the bike. There was an accident that happened and he was down on the ground and they were attending to him, and I heard sirens, and so the EMS was coming. It's pretty scary, you know, like you said, you're very vulnerable, you know, riding a bike, right? What can cyclists do to try to prevent that?
Right, and so, you know, I'm a cyclist.
Okay.
For fitness, and I've ridden in groups and I'm on my own.
And you've also ridden to work, I've heard.
True, that's true. I live pretty close to work, and so I'm fortunate enough I ride my bike when the weather's nice and there's bike lanes
Yeah.
between my house and the office. But I think the number one thing bicyclists can do to help themselves is increase visibility. There's,
Okay,
you know,
okay.
you can get flashing lights you can put on the back, bright colored clothes, and certainly wearing a helmet.
Right.
'Cause I think the problem is twofold. I mean, a cyclist doesn't take up the space on the road like a car does.
Right.
And so they're easy, you know, to miss. I think
Right.
if you're not expecting to see a cyclist. And I think driver distractions, I think that's a problem that's increasing, not
Sure.
decreasing. And whether it's, you know, ride down the road once and look at the people in the car next to you and how many people have this in their hand as they're riding down the road.
Right.
Or, you know, people just not seeing because they don't expect it.
When you talk about traumatic brain injuries, I would think that the percentage would be fairly high when you're talking about a cyclist accident.
Right. I mean, so of course, you know, a helmet would be the number one recommendation. But again, you know, as a cyclist, you're exposed. You don't have the metal of a vehicle around you. And so even if you're wearing a helmet, yeah, traumatic brain injury is a likely injury. And it doesn't take, you know, the fact of a helmet is not going to negate the presence of a traumatic brain injury. It's really what's happening to the brain inside the skull, you know, that force applied and what's happening to the brain inside the skull that's going to lead to the traumatic brain injury.
So even though you're protected with that bike helmet, and I felt those bike helmets, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot to them.
Well, I mean, and if it's a direct impact,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the helmet's going to provide some safety, but it's not going to be a guarantee, you know, against preventing injury.
I would think a big issue might be the fact that a motorist, someone driving a vehicle, a car, a truck, whatever, sees the bike not as a vehicle, but sees the bike as a bike, right? Because I know I've been in certain lanes of traffic and busier streets where the cyclist is right in the middle lane.
Yeah, and like even
Right?
driving downtown, and you get
Yeah,
nervous. You don't
downtown,
the,
right.
the main thing to do, I think, obviously, would just be I'd slow down.
Right.
You know, and then, but that's a great question. You know, where they're considered vehicles, right? So
They are considered vehicles under the law, and so like, yeah, they have every right to be in the lane. But yeah,
right.
treating them, we all know what 6 feet is, right? 6 feet of social distancing. Like we've gotten that lesson down in the last year.
Yeah.
I think that's a good rule of thumb when you're passing a bicyclist.
Right.
You know, let's give them 6 feet of distance. I think that's a good rule of thumb. And if you're the cyclist, needing to be aware of your surroundings, I think, is also of paramount importance. Not using headphones.
Okay.
When you're riding, you need to be able to hear.
Yes.
You know, because you can hear an approaching vehicle sooner than you would see it. Or mirrors that allow you to look behind you.
What's the first step? What does a cyclist need to do? They've been hurt, or a loved one, their loved one is a cyclist, that they've been hurt in a wreck. What do they need to do?
Yeah. Well, first, obviously, get the required medical care that they need.
Right.
Reporting the claim. I mean, a lot of times because it's not a vehicle, you know, I think the claims need to be reported, and getting the information about the other driver, getting law enforcement involved, you know, so that there can be a documentation of the wreck itself. And then,
save the bike.
yeah, save the bike, absolutely, because
Even
that's
if
going to be
it's-
important.
Even if it's trashed, you know, because
Right.
that could be evidence used in
Right.
part of the case.
Okay.
Right, yeah, that can give information about how the wreck occurred. We've had that situation where, you know, the back tire was just crushed in, where you can tell it was a direct hit from the back. I mean, that's important information because a lot of times you may not have eyewitnesses.
Right. And of course, call the Whitley Law Firm. It's a free call, and make that consultation.
Right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a free, I've recently talked with a cyclist who was in a pretty bad wreck, who reported the claim was denied. She called, we were able to bond because we're both cyclists. But,
Yeah,
you know,
I think that's why
understand.
she hired us. Is
Yeah.
because she knew that Ann was a cyclist.
I'm sure.
And she was a
Yeah.
cyclist, and you know, it's a different situation. So you got to know what the rules are and how it is out there with the cars.
We're going to take a short break. We're going to be back with our final segment in just a minute.